Okay, let me be clear. All right, I'm gonna try my best to condense this video into 10 minutes or less. I'm gonna try my best. I'll speak fast, I'll do my best. But I'm telling you, I had a blast when I was doing the research for today's topic. Trying to figure out how to reach our destinations and everything like that, man. There's a lot of good stuff, and I really need to probably split it up over the course of a couple of videos. But like I said, for today's purposes, I'm gonna try to kind of squeeze everything in that I learned and sum it all up for you all. Okay, so we talk about trying to reach our destinations. We set goals in our life. We make preparations and we prepare plans and things to that effect to try to reach our destination. That's just how we do it. We see something and we try to get there. Okay? Point A, point Z, right? But there's an in-between. Okay? There's an in-between, your starting point to your destination. And I like to call that in-between the will of God. Okay? Because it's His will whether or not you're going to reach your destination, right? So, okay, with that being said, there's a book out there it's called The Will of God, and it's actually called The Will of God. It's by Leslie Weatherhead. Okay, and what this dude did, man, he was really cool, man. He broke down the will of God into 3 components. Okay, all right. Before I get into those components, he talked about how loosely we use the term or the phrase will of God. Like we put it with everything. You know what I'm saying? Whatever happens is just the Lord's will, the will of God. If someone dies, someone gets shot with a stray bullet, if a car wreck happens, train wreck, whatever, all of it is the will of God. Like he explained how that makes no logical sense. Okay, and he used the example of one of his good friends. One of his good friends is actually a doctor, right? And he fought for his wife's life for weeks, trying to save his wife's life. It didn't work. She ended up dying. Okay, so of course he said, you guessed it, he said that was the will of God, for her to die. So Leslie is just like, he's like, that doesn't make any sense. So that means for weeks, you being a doctor, you fought for weeks against God's will? No. And then he went further to say, okay, so if she would have lived and she would have recovered, I suppose that would have been God's will too. How can her dying and her recovering both be God's will? For intentional purposes, they don't make no sense. And that's the point he was trying to make. We should not throw that phrase around so loosely like that. But we're guilty of it. Anything that happens, good or bad. We say, yeah, God has absolute power, so He allows things to happen. That is true. But let me just go into the components that Leslie Weatherhead described inside of the will of God, and then you guys will have a better understanding like I do. Okay, so the first component to the will of God will be His intentional will. God's intentional will for our lives. You know what I'm saying? It was His intention for us to have heaven on earth. It was an intention for us to never have to work or worry or have pain or sickness or sorrow. It's His intention for everyone to be saved, no one to be left behind. You know what I'm saying? That's His intention. Okay? But the circumstance may have it, it's not like that. And that leads to His second will, the second component of the will of God, and that's His circumstantial will. You know what I'm saying? That's what He allows to happen, the good and the bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, He accepts the fact that we have free will. So everybody's not going to choose to love Him. Everybody's not going to want to be saved. And some people are going to be lost. And He accepts the fact. You know what I'm saying? He accepts that. That's His circumstantial will. Good or bad. third component to the will of God in that book. And I really encourage you guys, I want you guys, you know what I'm saying, I'm going to read it. I'm going to, you know, if the Lord's will, I'm going to finish it. I only read as much as I could, you know, to help with, you know, today's video. But, you know, I'm gonna go try to finish reading it as soon as I can. And I want you guys to pick it up, man. The Will of God by Leslie Weatherhead. Okay, so the third will, the third component is the ultimate will of God. Now what this is this is how God achieves his purposes. This is how he reaches his goals. It doesn't matter what the circumstance is, because ultimately he's still going to get to his good. It's still going to end up good in spite of the bad circumstance. Or it could be a good circumstance, but it's no matter what happens, his will is still going to happen. It's just ultimately going to happen. And that's the ultimate will of God. So, okay, I'm going to break all three components into like a very familiar story, and I'm just going to use Jesus dying on the cross. Okay, so God sends Jesus down here to intentionally sends Jesus down here to spread a message, for us to receive his message and to understand his teachings, you know what I'm saying, and for us to grow closer to God through him. Okay, that was his intentional will for that to happen. Well, as circumstances may have it, some people didn't like that. Some people don't even like the fact that he came here. They didn't believe his teachings. They didn't want to follow him. They hated on him. They betrayed him. They ended up persecuting him, killing him, crucifying him. You know what I'm saying? That's not God's will. You know what I'm saying? That's a will inside of God's will. That's really the ways of an evil will. To persecute and kill somebody, you know what I'm saying, because you don't understand them. That wasn't God's will, but God allowed that to happen. It was his will for that to happen. It was his will for that to take place, that circumstance to happen. Even the circumstance of death, because Jesus died on the cross and then he rose again. Okay? So, even though that circumstance where it led to Jesus' death happened, ultimately, are there not people still following Jesus' teachings? Are there not people receiving his messages and spreading them and drawing closer to God through him? This is very important, people, because this really applies to everybody that can hear this video. It doesn't matter the circumstance. It doesn't matter what circumstances we're in. God has an intentional will for our life. He has it all mapped out. And we can either go left, right, up, or down through circumstance, through free will and through agency and through just doing what we want to do or whatever. Or not even that, but just universal law. You know what I'm saying? The energies of the universe taking place. Nature running its course. Just circumstance that happens. It's no more fair to me than it is to you. But even though these circumstances take place, good or bad, ultimately, if we love him and we do what he will want us to do, we're going to reach our destination. I truly, honestly believe that. Because that's the perfect example. He intended for people to get closer to him through Jesus, and that's what happened in the end. So, there's no different from that story than from our life story, from our individual life stories. Circumstances happen where we give up all the time. We feel devastated. We want to give up. Cancer, AIDS, being raped, you know what I'm saying? Making a bad grade on the chemistry test, family breaking up, you know what I'm saying? Getting a ticket, you know what I'm saying? Whatever. Circumstances happen. But if God allows it to happen, again, it might not be his will that we have a death in the family. It may not be his will that, you have cancer right now and you're bedridden. It may not be his will, but he allows that circumstance to happen. But that don't mean that your purpose can't be fulfilled. That don't mean that you can't reach your destination. because you still can, as long as you love God with all your heart. And that's how powerful the will of God is. We should not take it lightly at all. I said a couple of weeks back, I don't have the fancy schmancy programs and stuff like that. As circumstances may have it, I don't really have a lot of money like that. But that's not going to stop me from doing these videos every week. I got connectivity. I got a topic. And I got a webcam. That's all I need. You know what I'm saying? So, think about that. You know what I mean? Still, if you don't reach your plans, if your plans fall through, if you don't reach your goals, don't give up, man. You got to still fulfill your purpose. You got to reach your destination, man. And the way you do that is you love God with all your heart, man. You trust Him. Trust Him in any circumstance there is. Okay? One more thing. I need to address this. Well, why did God allow certain circumstances to happen? He just, okay. I'm not going to say I understand his level of thinking. I don't understand it. I imagine, my son probably come to me. Dad, why you let me fall off my bike when I was trying to learn how to ride it and scratch my knee? What kind of father are you? I mean, he have to learn. He doesn't understand. He will when he gets older. And I imagine when we leave this child form that we are in, you know what I'm saying, we think we're intellectual, but we're really not. We're not touching God's understanding. But when we ascend to that level, we will understand why He allows sicknesses and AIDS and rape and death and murder and death and all that. Like, we'll understand that one day. We'll understand the circumstances why He allows certain circumstances to happen. Right now, we don't. That don't mean He's an unloving God, and it don't mean that's His will for it to happen. We express positivity. Sometimes He uses evil things that will allow good to be expressed. You know what I'm saying? That evil doesn't produce good, but it produces the expression of good. You know what I'm saying? To make a positive outcome. You feel me? So, I'm going to end it like this. No circumstance. If God going to allow the circumstance to happen, it's not bigger than His ultimate will for your life. So don't be afraid of it. Have ultimate faith with that. I love you guys. Thank you for listening. And any feedback is of course appreciated, man. But I see you guys next week.